Hello class. So we're going to talk about solving equations. If you think about PEMDAS, um, there's a specific order of operations, right? And we played this game a little bit ago where if I'm thinking of a number and the first thing I do to it is multiply by 7, and then the next thing I do is I subtract 3, and then my answer is 11. How would you go back to figure out what the original number was? You would work backwards, right? So this is the setup right here. I have this number question mark, and the first thing I do is multiply by 7. And then I minus 3, and then I end up with 11. And so if you look at this problem, if you knew what the number was, you would do the order of operations according to PEMDAS. Now, when you're solving equations and you're trying to go backwards, then you are going the opposite direction of PEMDAS. And when you're solving for a missing variable. So, to go backwards, I have to add 3 first to this 11 that I got. And so you add 3 on both sides, and then I have 7 times question mark. And then I end up with 14. And then the first thing that I did in the beginning was I multiplied by 7, so that means I have to divide by 7 by the 14. Which makes me get the number that was missing was 2. And so a way to check that is if you plug the 2 into the equation, then you end up with that number, 11. And so that's what solving equations is. So if this doesn't make sense, we're just going to kind of take it one step at a time and do one-step equations today. And then tomorrow when you come back, we will do two-step equations and maybe a little bit more. All these words right here, I'm just going to kind of skip, okay? It's just saying that there are different properties. So why don't you go ahead, scroll down to the bottom of the page. So if you look at this first one, c minus 22 is equal to 54. So I have a number, I subtract that number by 22, and I end up with 54. So since you subtracted by 22 originally, and I like to put a wall there at the equal sign so that I know doing one thing on one side of the equal sign and I do it on the other side, then you do the opposite. You add 22 on both sides, and you end up with c is equal to 76. How can you check your answer? Take the 76 and subtract it by 22, and you should get 54. And we do. So that means 76 is the missing number that we're looking for. Okay? Go ahead and try the next two. And then pause the video for a little bit and check your answers, or you do your work, and then after a little bit, unpause the video and then check your work. There's my work. For each of these subtraction problems, I just did the opposite of that. I added on both sides. And if you want to check to make sure that you got the correct answers, just plug in 138 into this first one, and you should end up with 113 when you subtract by 25. And same thing for J. Same thing for the second row. It's all addition problems. So since the variable is being added to all these numbers, then the opposite that you have to do is subtract. So 63 plus m is equal to 79. So then you subtract 63 on both sides, and then it cancels on the left side here, and you end up with m is equal to 16. Again, you can check that answer to make sure that you're correct. Pause the video and try those two. So make sure, for this third one, negative 12 minus 16, make sure you remember the rules for operations, integers, positive, negative, plus or minus, all that stuff. And then this bottom row, you have 2/3 times q is equal to 1/2. Now there's something special when you have a fraction being multiplied to a variable. In order to get rid of this 2/3, you have to multiply by its reciprocal on both sides. And so 3 times 2 is 6, and 2 times 3 is 6. 6 over 6 is 1, right? And so that cancels, and you end up with q by itself here And then 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 2 is 4, and make sure it is simplified. In this case, it is my q equals 3/4. My middle one here, I have 39 is equal to negative 3 times q. Since it is times q, I am going to do the opposite and divide both sides by negative 3. And so I have q is equal to a positive divided by a negative gives me a negative 13. Try this one on your own. Again, since there's a fraction being multiplied by the variable, you have to multiply by its opposite, or its reciprocal, and then a positive times a negative gives you a negative. If these 9 examples didn't make sense, pause the video, rewind a little bit, or you can pause and ask a classmate of what happened. Otherwise, you can move on to the video and get to the word problems. The problem says, of a group of 13 to 15-year-old girls surveyed, 225, or about 9/20ths, said they talked on the phone while they watched TV. About how many girls were surveyed? Now you have to first determine what is the missing variable. So the missing variable is the total number of girls who were surveyed. We don't know that number. So G is my variable. Now it says 9/20ths of the total girls is 225. So pause the video for a little bit. Try to think of an equation that fits that statement. 9/20ths of the total girls is 25. If this is what you got, it might be a good sign. So G is the total number of girls. 9/20ths of these girls, so of is actually a keyword for multiplication, so 9/20ths times the total girls is 225. And then now you just go ahead and solve. So pause the video again, take a minute to solve it. So if you multiply both sides by the reciprocal, 20 over 9, you should have gotten G is equal to 500. And since this is a word problem, you need to make sure you give the units. 500 total girls were surveyed, or you could just say 500 total girls. Read the problem on the bottom and see if you can get an equation. And I'm actually going to close the video right here. Again, if the word problem didn't make sense, try to go back, ask a classmate. If for the problem at the bottom here, check with a classmate and see if you got the same equation and the answers as each other.